For much of modern American politics, socialism was treated as a fringe label, something candidates avoided, opponents weaponized, and major parties kept at a distance. Yet the Democratic Socialists of America, usually called DSA, has become the largest socialist political organization in United States history, with more than 120,000 members as of July 2026. It is not a political party with its own ballot line. It does not run a presidential ticket under a DSA banner. Instead, it functions as a broad political organization on the left, combining electoral work, labor organizing, issue campaigns, and direct action. To understand DSA is to understand a central tension in American left politics, whether change should be pursued through existing institutions, outside them, or through some uneasy combination of both. DSA describes itself as organized around democratic socialism, but it is also a big tent. That matters because the organization contains members with different views about elections, unions, protest, political parties, and how quickly American society can be transformed. Some members focus on winning concrete reforms, like healthcare expansion or tenant protections. Others emphasize building long-term power for workers and communities beyond traditional party politics. The phrase democratic socialism signals two ideas at once: a commitment to political democracy, and a belief that major economic decisions should not be left only to private owners and markets. In DSA's vision, democracy should extend deeper into workplaces, housing, healthcare, education, and the broader economy. The organization was founded in 1982 through a merger between two groups, the Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee, or DSOC, and the New American Movement, known as NAM. This was more than a bureaucratic merger. It represented a symbolic attempt to heal an old divide on the American left. DSOC was associated with the old left tradition, social democrats, trade unionists, and people who believed in working through labor institutions and the Democratic Party. NAM came from the New Left, shaped by the social movements of the 1960s, including anti-war activism, feminism, civil rights, and community organizing. DSA was born from the idea that these traditions did not have to remain separate. Its best-known early leader was Michael Harrington, a writer and democratic socialist who argued that the American left should work within the Democratic Party to push it in a more progressive direction. This strategy was often called realignment. The basic theory was that the Democratic Party contained conflicting forces: labor unions, civil rights groups, urban political machines, business interests, and more conservative factions. If socialists and progressives could strengthen the party's left wing, they might eventually transform it into a vehicle for social democratic reform. For DSA's first 3 decades, this approach made it less a mass movement than a small advocacy organization trying to influence the broader liberal coalition. For years, DSA remained relatively small. In 2015, it had about 6,000 members, a modest number in a country of hundreds of millions. Then 2 political shocks changed the organization's trajectory. The first was Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. Sanders, a self-identified democratic socialist, brought ideas like Medicare for all, tuition-free public college, and class-based politics into mainstream campaign coverage. The second was the election of Donald Trump, which pushed many younger progressives toward organized political action. For people angry at inequality, climate inaction, student debt, and the direction of national politics, DSA suddenly looked like a place to turn frustration into collective power. This membership explosion changed DSA's internal character. A group that had once been older, smaller, and more oriented toward advocacy became younger, larger, and more activist. New members did not simply want to lobby Democrats from the sidelines. Many wanted DSA to build an independent political force capable of pressuring, challenging, or eventually replacing parts of the existing political order. But because DSA is decentralized, this shift did not happen as a single command from national leadership. Local chapters and ideological caucuses have significant autonomy, which means the organization can look different from city to city. New York, Los Angeles, and the Washington metropolitan area became some of its largest and most visible centers. DSA's platform combines immediate reforms with a long-term socialist goal. On the reform side, it supports policies such as a Green New Deal, single-payer healthcare, and tuition-free higher education. These are not random issue positions. They reflect a belief that basic needs should be treated as social rights rather than privileges tied to income, employment, or private insurance. A Green New Deal links climate policy with jobs and public investment. Single-payer healthcare aims to remove private insurance barriers and make medical care universal. Tuition-free higher education challenges the idea that access to college should require decades of debt. For DSA, these reforms are steps toward a more democratic economy. The long-term aim is social ownership and democratic control of the American economy. That phrase can sound abstract, but the core idea is straightforward. Workers and communities should have more power over the institutions that shape their lives. Instead of major decisions being made primarily by corporate executives, shareholders, or wealthy investors, Democratic Socialists argue for economic structures that are accountable to the public. This could include stronger unions, public ownership in key sectors, cooperatives, and expanded democratic planning. DSA members do not all agree on exactly what this future should look like, but they generally share the belief that political democracy is incomplete when economic power remains highly concentrated. Foreign policy is another important part of DSA's identity. The organization describes its approach as anti-imperialist. In practice, that means it strongly supports cuts to U.S. military spending and reductions in the global footprint of the American military. DSA argues that resources used for war, bases, and intervention could be redirected towards social needs at home and peaceful international priorities abroad. The organization has also been strongly supportive of pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist causes. These positions place DSA to the left of most national Democratic politicians and have sometimes made its endorsed officials and members part of intense public controversy, especially when foreign policy debates intersect with elections. Electoral politics is where DSA receives the most public attention, but its electoral strategy is unusual. Because DSA is not a political party with its own ballot line, it endorses candidates running on other lines or as independents. Those candidates may be Democrats, Working Families Party candidates, Greens, or independents, depending on the race and location. DSA chapters often provide canvassing, volunteers, small-dollar fundraising energy, and grassroots legitimacy. The organization's goal is not simply to elect people with a DSA label. It is to build a bloc of elected officials who support its values and remain connected to movements outside government, from unions to tenant groups to climate campaigns. The most famous DSA elected officials include Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib, both elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2018. Their victories showed that candidates associated with democratic socialism could win major offices, especially when they connected economic issues with grassroots organizing and dissatisfaction with establishment politics. By 2025, more than 250 DSA members held elected public office across 40 states, and 90% of them had been elected after 2019. That statistic is important because it shows how recent the organization's electoral rise really is. DSA's officeholders are not only in Congress. They also appear in state legislatures, city councils, and local government. One of the most striking examples of DSA's expanding electoral reach was Zoran Mamdani, elected mayor of New York City in 2025. New York is especially significant because DSA is headquartered there and because the city has one of the organization's largest chapters. A mayoralty is different from a legislative seat. It involves direct responsibility for administration, budgets, agencies, and crisis management. When Democratic Socialists move from opposition campaigns into executive office, they face a harder test. They must translate movement demands into governing choices while dealing with legal limits, business pressure, media scrutiny, and competing public expectations. That makes local power both an opportunity and a challenge for DSA. The central debate inside DSA has never fully disappeared. Should it keep working through the Democratic Party, or build something more independent? The old realignment strategy assumed that the Democratic Party could be pushed left from within. Many newer activists are more skeptical, arguing that dependence on Democratic ballot lines can limit socialist politics and force compromises with party leadership. But the American electoral system makes third-party politics extremely difficult, especially because of winner-take-all elections and ballot access barriers. So DSA often operates in a gray zone, not a party, not merely a pressure group, and not fully outside the Democrats. Its future may depend on how it manages that contradiction. DSA's rise tells a larger story about American politics after 2016. Economic inequality, climate anxiety, healthcare costs, student debt, labor unrest, and distrust of traditional institutions created space for a socialist organization to grow at a scale once thought impossible in the United States. But growth also brings problems: internal disagreements, public scrutiny, uneven local chapters, and the difficult transition from protest to power. DSA is best understood not as a single campaign, candidate, or slogan, but as a decentralized attempt to build democratic socialist power in a political system not designed for it. Whether it becomes a lasting force or a temporary surge depends on whether it can turn activism into durable organization. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.